Hello all, welcome to another edition of Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 104 for June 30, 2023. And since we're right before 4th of July here in the US, we'll call this one Freedom to Low Code. This is an event we do every week, Fridays this hour, to get together, talk about low code in general, plant and app in specific, and you are welcome here. So if you're watching this on a YouTube replay, please join us next Friday. As you know, we publish all these on youtube.com/plantandapp. So do look for them there, subscribe, hit the alarm bell so that you know when we post new things. We'll run this agenda today, which shows we will start out with introductions and then go around the campfire, starting with first call. And oftentimes we don't get beyond that, but we aspire to get to lots of things, any contributions or feature requests or submitted topics. And we do have a submitted topic, so we'll get that far at least. Simple guidelines: if you got noise going on behind you, hit mute. If you decide to talk, remember to hit unmute and be nice to each other. You can submit things in advance. You can use this QR code, or also the emails that we send you have the link on it. And I'm going to post it here in the chat in a minute as well. So with that, good morning. I'm Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantandapp.
Good morning.
Good morning,
everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Do put that.
Dale has a new backyard.
I have a same backyard, but it's the 4th of July. I have to celebrate somehow. Let's see, where is this? In advance, where is it? Oh, here it is. So we had a question, somebody couldn't get to it, so there's the link if you need it, but it should be in the emails that we send, so hopefully that'll help. Okay. So first call, what's going on?
Quiet group, so I'll start.
Glad someone would. That's part of my challenge, is just being quiet long enough for somebody to jump in.
Actually, I got a couple of different things. One is kind of a bizarre thing, and I'm not positive how to solve it, but it seems that, well, I think I've talked before about having an app that I've created that will play an audio clip, and then will show where you are in the clip. One of my clients has a service that they use, and they do a log. So it's very similar in concept to the when you go to YouTube and you guys ask YouTube to do a transcript, and it puts a time-stamped transcript down on the in the notes underneath the YouTube video. Well, they provide a text file, which is basically a tab delimited file with the start time, the duration time from the beginning, and a line about what it is they're talking about. And so what I do is I have a form page that puts up the audio player, and then underneath it has a little div, and it walks through. So that's all kind of nice. The problem that I'm finding, it was working fine on one site. I created a development site and put it over there, because what I wanted to do was take it from being a hard-coded file to being an entity that the client uploads those two files, the log file and the sound file, and then the grid will show the different log files that they have, the different events that they've recorded, with a play button. And then when you click play, then it goes over to this app that I built. So the problem is that the audio current time will not set. Nothing to do with Plantandapp. I have a separate question about Plantandapp. I was just wondering if anybody knew about HTML5 audio and current settings. What I learned is that there's some additional things that you could tell the server, but I don't know how to configure that. And I was wondering if anyone else had run into that kind of situation. Works fine in Safari, but it doesn't work in Chrome. So if anyone has an idea, that'd be great. It sounds from the crickets that no, it's one of those weird things. So that's fine. The other thing that's much more relevant to everybody else is the document. So what I did was there's two files. There's a sound file and a log file. And so in the entities definition, I created the event has a title, the event has a date, and then there's a log file and a sound file. So that's it, 4 entry entity, plus all the stuff that you add onto it, created by, and those other things. I see that when you go to show the form, that you show that in the pre-init, you read the recording entity, the entity I created, and then right below that, you read 2 document entities. And when you read the entities, it says the output of the entities is a token. But then I thought that from there, you could say that token name : relative URL, or that token physical path, or that token whatever. And when I go to test that, the entity, the token itself is the file name, not the path, but the file name of the file. And the relative URL is blank and the physical path is blank. So I'm confused as to what you get back from the read from the read document action. What is that value supposed to be?
So I'm bringing up, Don posted a ticket yesterday, and he found a bug for us, and
usually the bugs are me.
I'm sorry, what?
Usually the bugs are me.
Well, I would just wanted to say I'm impressed, because it's not only that you found the bug, but you found the solution. So this is really good. So just to show off the bug, we have a sound file and a log file. Notice they're 2 different names. An image file that has 2 different names. One is January 2018, the other is May 2010, and then a username that is different. And all these are using our entities. And when you dig in and go to the default detail page, what you get is the sound file and the log file are both showing the same name. The image is showing the same. The user is showing the same. And the details form definition is the reason behind it. This is something that we automatically code for you, and most of the time it does a really great job. But in these instances, it doesn't. So, and now we're kind of getting back to your question. In the initialization, there's a read document and a read document. One, we're reading the sound file. The other, we're reading the log file. And in both cases, we are outputting, by default, we output original document. And I've messed with this a little bit, so I'll go on to image. We're reading the image file for image 1 and outputting original image. We're reading the original image 2 and outputting original image. And so since it's outputting the same token, we don't have something different to display when it comes to building the automatic detail form display, which is done here. And so we are showing the sound file showing the original document file name and original document file name for both the for both the sound file and the log file. So it's easy to straighten out. And now that I'm looking at it, Don, I wanted to extend that answer a little bit to say, the next time that you regenerate the form, I noticed that it changes this content as well, changes it back. So once you start, when you have this circumstance, you may end up fighting it for a while until you get it fixed.
If you edit and save the entity and then it runs through its process of cleaning up or modifying the pages that you build automatically, that's the part at which I'll be fighting it.
I believe so, and let's illustrate. So the fix for this is we did read document and we're outputting original document. So that's for the sound file. For the log file, I'm outputting original document log file. And so now we have a separate token that we can consume. And if we go into the field and see the definition of the field, sorry, I'm bouncing around here. So we have the event title, the event date, the sound file, and now for the log file, instead of using original document, the workaround is to fix this original document log file, this new token that we've created, so that when we save and refresh, we get sound file and the log file. So that's the workaround. Let's take a look at if we edit the entity and do nothing more than resave it and override. I think it's going to rebuild those, and let's see if it rebuilds it, leaving your change or overwriting it. So we'll let it do its work. Refresh. And it has overwritten it. So we didn't reconcile that very well either. So that's the place. If you edit the entity and save it, it's going to change your static text C view template back to whatever it thinks is the correct thing, which is interesting behavior. We'll take a note to look into this, talk about it in the product team, but this, I would have thought it would try to keep changes that you do here. And that kind of tells me that any changes that you do to customize this field is not going to be kept. So perhaps the solution then is to clone it off, and we can take a look and see if this is going to do it. And make the change again here. Gotta find it. And file, log file. So there it is. And then we'll show this one.
You have to change the read document as well, or no? Looks like not.
I've got them wired correctly at the moment. So we've got the sound file and the log file going correctly. So now we'll edit this thing again and see if it leaves it alone like I'd hope it would. Let's see. Edit. Save. Override. And I know I'm not answering your question yet, but I'm trying to help you with keeping the frustration low while we figure out how to fix
I got that right, sure.
Okay. So yeah, now it's leaving the field that we added, it's leaving it alone. It's going to be modifying the one that it has, but at least you have a way of doing the work and not getting it overwritten every time. So clone the field off and do that. Okay, so now to your question, what is being returned by that action? So we have an action that says read document, it's returning open original document. And Patrick, do you happen to know the answer to this one in advance?
Well, I think it's returning like, all the fields that you would see like for the table. Like if you go to SQL console and expand dbo.files, it'll that's what I think.
Well, that helps. I didn't know it was where it was actually storing this document type.
It's in the files table.
Files. Okay.
Yeah. So all the way at the bottom of the list there, tails where you see it.
So we should, for example, be able to get
Dot title or dot folder. Yeah. And I think, yeah.
So let's, I'm gonna,
Yeah,
this,
test it out.
read it on date. All right, so we have this file, and it's got a lot of things to it. It's got file name, extension, size. So we should be able to get size off of it, for example. So this would be, I was working with the image. It happened to be an image that was there. Which one? Doesn't matter. So we have an output called original image. If we were to go into our fields, and I'm just going to take the lazy way out here and do a text box and call it the size and initialize it to word. That should have a value. The image has original image. Any thoughts, Patrick?
Nope, no thoughts. That's what I expected, and I thought that, but maybe it's just basic information about the file, like so let's try it just,
ID, or with ID perhaps.
yeah, or file, or I mean folder, something like that. That's odd.
We're doing it in.
You didn't get that error before. So it's the second read image one that you, isn't it, or the first one?
Well,
Oh,
it doesn't matter. They're both outputting to the same time.
oh, right, yeah. Original image.
And we're trying to consume it here, original image. Is ID part of the list? What else is there? File ID. Actually, let's take the default value to start with. See what at least prove that we're getting something.
I think you'll see the file name. That's what I
Yeah.
saw.
Good. All right. So we're getting something. So then the question is, what else is there? Hard to explore exactly what's there. It doesn't look like it's getting a lot, does it? So if you read image is not giving back what we
Where I thought you were going with this, Dale, and I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but I know you've shown this before, is I thought you were going to go with your output your list into JSON format method that you've shown before.
Yeah, and I don't think I have that action on here.
Okay.
I mean, if it's of interest, we could happily do that. If we have no other place to go, I'd be happy to jump over onto a system that has something that explores all that. But I think we can maybe take it as an action item to go to developers and ask what comes out of a read image, and how do we get access to all the other things. From a workaround perspective, Don, until we know the answer to that question, if you need to get, is it correct that you need more information out of?
Well, in general, yeah, I'd like to understand how it works. But what I did was I fought with it a while, and there's two instances. Of course, the sound file I need to get access to, and then the log file I need to get access to. So in the pre-init area of my form, where I take the log file, I have to get it, and then I change it to a list, and then I execute actions on that list. Basically parse through it to build an HTML table that shows the user where they are in the recording. So I break up the log file. So I need to know what that is to convert it to a list.
What is it that you're converting to a list?
The log file contents.
All right.
So the log file is a CSV. Actually, it's a TSV. And so in the convert CSV to list action, it says, okay, where's your CSV? And I was just putting in the original log file : relative URL. And that broke. That didn't work. So it gave an error.
So now you're getting it from somewhere else.
So what I'm doing now is, because I put in a display, and I said, okay, what is the token value of, or the value of the token original log file relative URL, original log file : absolute URL, original log file : physical path. And only one of them had a value, the original log file, the original token. And it was the file name. So in my convert CSV to list, I said that the file is in file / entities / recording / log file / token. And that works, which is confusing on a couple of matters. First of all, the fact that I don't know how this token works frustrates me. But secondly, isn't the file in the portal folder, portal/0 folder? And so I'm not clear on why /file works. Shouldn't it be /portal/0/file? But apparently /file works.
It's from your portal root. So it's relative to your portal root That's why it works. So you don't have to have portal 0. It's you don't have to have /portal/0. It picks it up correctly from your portal root.
Okay.
And then files is the directory that's, where when you implant an app, when you create this relationship, it puts everything into that, that structure underneath
Right.
files. Yeah.
Right. That's cool. And then the second is in the part where I build the HTML to spit out an audio file controller. You need to know where that file is, and that is also in the /files/ et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that isn't relative to the portal because it's not Planet app that's interpreting it. That's just pure HTML. The browser's interpreting it. So that has to be /portal/ it has to be the full path, which was a bit confusing all around.
Forgive me if I'm not completely understanding the scenario, but could you use the file get link token with the file ID?
As a matter of fact, then I also realized that you can't call that file directly from HTML because DNN won't let you. So you do have to use the file link. So I'm trying to pull that up so that I can find that exact clip where I grab that. And then I can tell you what it is. Static. So what I had to end up doing was the file token to make it work. So what I did was in the recording entity, I'm storing the 2 documents, right? So you've got your event title, your event date, and your log file and your sound file. So the log file and the sound file in my table are the file IDs of the file IDs of those 2 files. So I knew that. So the call that I do, source equals for the audio tag, source equals file colon get link file identifier equals my sound file value out of my original recording table. So it has nothing to do with the document table because I didn't know what that was doing, nor now do I see that I actually can get that from the document table because it's not returning the ID, it's returning the file name itself. So in order for this to work, I had to use that, but it works. But it's weird.
So as a potential workaround, we can see that I got the sound file folder name displaying, and so
Yep.
I'll just show you the path that I used to get that. You can run a SQL query out of the files table, so selecting everything from the files table where the file is the file ID, and I used the original sound file, just like when we read the document, we used it's using the record ID of the original sound file. So this information is available in the files table, as Patrick has pointed out.
And this is exactly what I expected the action to do. It's exactly what what Dale's recreated here. But
Right.
Yeah, it would be great if the read document returned all of this content, but it only returns file name apparently. Perhaps there's more, but at least it appears it only returns file name as a default value. So you can use SQL to go get everything and storing it in file info, and then you can display whatever you want out of it. And so, for example, I'm displaying the folder. We'll do the same thing, just kind of prove some other stuff here. And what else was there? File name. So grab several things here and then just prove that we're correcting all the different pieces that you might want. We've got a length or size.
So, and something else I just saw that clearly shows that the action is reprocessing the data from the table. Is that you can output the ID, but but if you're using the action, it's :ID. If you're using Dale's method here, it's going to be :file ID, because file ID is the actual name of the column in the files table. It's not called ID; it's called file ID, and so but the action outputs the file ID to :ID. So yeah, definitely the read action is reprocessing and aliasing data from the files table, and not including everything.
and it's underdocumented.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So several good catches done.
Yeah.
And again, I love it that you came with a bug report and a workaround. That's very much appreciated. Is that the end of your list, Rush?
That's all that I could. I had the time with fighting to make it all work. If I do have a couple more projects that I'm trying to get through, and I'm sure I will run into weird things like this that I'll get to report on next week.
Excellent. There was a topic submitted in advance. What's the impact of making backend changes to a SQL table created by Plant and App? And talking about adding a composite index. So I talked with a developer about this, and if you're talking about tables that are in the app namespace, meaning one that you create, so you're creating an entity and it creates app dot whatever, it should leave indexes alone. So you can create the composite index, and it should persist. The only caution that he had was on our metadata tables that are in that, not in the app namespace. That ours are on DBO. Some of them are in Plant and App as well, namespace. So those are subject to change. See, ours we're trying to go towards Plant and App, and DBO would be the platforms.
Something that I've experimented with in the past is taking a planted app generated entity table and turning it into making it a temporal table so that it actually has a duplicate history table, and that works successfully. It does. I've noticed that history tables are very slow to load when you're looking at them in SSMS, but it doesn't seem to really impact front end performance. But so that's something I've experimented with in the past, just to add to this. And the other thing that I've experimented with is taking the relationship table that is created for one-to-many relationships, and then adding a property to the relationship table. Specifically, I added an order property to it because we wanted to be able to, the client wanted to be able to have the related entities ordered by the parent entity that they're associated with. So if the parent entity is different, then you need to have a whole new order for the child, the related child properties, and that worked nicely too. And I made updates, didn't override, and the column that I added to the relationship table persisted.
Sorry, you did an override?
I did, yes. I updated the entity, didn't override, and then went back and checked my table, and the column that I had added persisted.
Jim, did you want to jump in?
Well, so this is a performance issue. So what I was trying to solve, and the index solved it. And I was just mostly concerned about just what Patrick was saying. If I went in then and later we add a column or something like that, off to the planted app entity table that we created, that we would have to blow it up, or we would blow things up. But I'm glad to hear that we won't. So now I didn't quite understand Patrick's example of copying the temporal table, though. But interesting.
Yeah, so that's temporal tables are it took me a while to grasp the concept, but it basically at a very basic level, you're creating a history of changes to a table. So it creates a record in a basically a table that reflects the structure of your original table, but also has it keeps track of dates. So if you update a record, the history table will have a copy of the original record in it and the date that it was no longer a valid record. So that's what that's what you accomplish by having a history table.
Well, and what's funny is that functionality is basically what I've duplicated in this table with weird keys and checksums and things like that. And it's like, oh
yeah,
search that.
So here's what I'd say I and the client I was working with learned together doing this, is that we started out with this concept, and in the end we decided that the temporal table was just too much. We didn't need to save that much history. We ended up targeting the history and ended up creating, like what you're saying, a history table that is much more targeting the actual data that they want to be able to go back and see, as opposed because when you do a temporal table, it's everything. Every time you make a change, you get this entire record, and I think that Ben might have a comment about this.
I was going to try and
no, okay. I thought because his camera came on, so I thought he was gonna jump in.
I was going to try and drag big data Ben into the discussion.
Okay, I have not, obviously haven't needed that level of logging, so I haven't researched that before. So now
Yeah.
a new section to go read. So okay, now in my case, we're getting this packet of JSON back and forth from a supplier, and all we really care about are a couple of fields in there if they change, and so we're writing them out to a table, and it worked fine, except it kept getting slower and slower and slower until we put the index on it, and then the slowness went away dramatically. Enough that we went from minutes to seconds, and we're like, oh, what did we break? It's working too well.
So just a quite unrelated story. I set about trying to tune a client's database one time, thinking, okay, if I add index, things are going to get better. And I had to completely pull. I don't know what I messed up, but you get playing around in there, and apparently I didn't know what I was doing, because it shot the performance completely. But yeah, glad that you had a good experience with it. Okay, blank slate, something else.
I have a question about creating a planted app entity, duplicating that table to another database, and then can I go in and find set connection strings inside planted app then to point to that other database? I have a customer that's unhappy that data is stored in the DNN database. They want to put it someplace else. But we like the features of, let's build it and use it build the table using the entity builder, do all the mapping and everything, but just not have it live there when we're done.
Yeah, my understanding, and I'll let Patrick correct me when I'm wrong, is that there's support for putting in connection strings in the individual in the individual
Actions. Yeah.
but not in terms of saying at a global level that this table lives here.
I believe that's
So
correct.
would that be a Ben magic script that finds all those connection string locations to, let me go populate it? Or you think there's as long as I'm not, using entity builder to go and change the table again. And that's
So for example, we have the this entity that I created for Don, which is called a weird name, console 3260, just the ticket number, but it has a connection string property in it, so you could override it to be elsewhere. I would say it should support tokens or a connection string. Typically, we can connect it through the web config too, right?
Mhm.
Supporting
and I have the other connection strings in there, and we have used tables that exist in their database, and we go in and pull them into grids and forms and things like that. And now the client's seeing the power of being able to maintain entities and design simple things outside of that, but they are in Plantinap, but they don't want the data living there. So,
Yep.
So I could go find all these connection string. If you think it's generally safe to find all those connection string locations and populate them, and that's an avenue I'll pursue. I just didn't want to try going down that path and then find out, oh, well, you can get all the way down to the read or the save or the, how do you get into those, the generated.
So I haven't done it. And, one of the things that I would think you're going to run into is that the Plantinap entity itself, when you go into entities, there's no way to define that the entity lives elsewhere. So it would give the impression that you're going to create it within Plantinap on the entities table and the entities option. You're going to move it off or create a copy of it, say off elsewhere. But then when you try to edit it with entities, it's editing the one within the database, within the core database, not your alternate database. And I don't think there's any way to point entities to another database. You have, if my memory serves, you've been asking variations of this question for as long as we've been talking. Is that true?
Yeah, but just now the client's getting more serious about it.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, I've been pushing back to them. And I mean, I have an open feature request to add the connection string to the entity and just not let you change it if it's, you can't go change the entity if you have a connection string set and type thing.
Yep. I would suggest bringing it up as a discussion item in the. Tell you what, I'll discuss it with you offline and with Bogdan as well and see.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with that, Dale.
Okay. I think I do too, but anyway. I would love to see the feature.
Ben's got an answer with his hand up.
Come in, Ben.
I don't necessarily have an answer, but just for clarification, I just want to make sure I understand what you're looking for. So you're basically, I mean, I can understand plant and app in the sense that you can't manage an entity outside of its own container. And truth be told, I agree with that. It becomes too difficult when you're asking plant and app to start also being able to fully manage table structures and indexes and all that on an outside database. But that being said, what you're looking for is basically to kind of catalog an external table to have it so that your system is kind of aware that it's there and then be able to query data from it or send data to it.
So
That
there's two asks here that have been open for a while. One is to take that external table like what you're describing and query it and build common read and put functions like you would with an entity that you created in Plant and App. We do that now, it's just a manual process. So, but we achieve, at the SQL level, we achieve that through other methods. What the client recently saw potentially was the ability to create entities and manage entities in Plant and App, and they like that feature, but they don't like having the data stored in the DNN database. They want it someplace else. So, like in the entity screen that Dale's got shown up, if we had a place to set the connection string so that it could go and create that table in another database, and let it do its magic, or that would be for me the easiest way, because you would only still have one copy of it. If we had a way in here to say, okay, for development purposes, we're going to build the table inside of the Plant and App database, and then when I'm ready, let me go publish it to another database at the SQL level. Leave that up to me. That would be an alternate method too.
So just kicking it around here. I'm sorry, did you have a response?
well, I was gonna say something, but you first. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just again, this is in the spirit of brainstorming and not in the spirit of offering any particular feature that you're going to hold me to. But if we, for both of those, for being able to have a table that you manage in a remote structure, if we were to populate the string here, and then let Plant and App manage it as it manages every the local tables, it seems like possible. There's probably some impacts that I'm not thinking of, and related tables is certainly going to come into it. And then just conceptually, the other one that you're talking about, and the ability to, it's essentially a linked table, right? Or to say you want Plant and App to be aware of the thing that's in another database, and not be able to manage it here. So there's it seems possible. It would just be like a different entity definition that's read only.
Right.
I mean, I'm just gonna jump in from a different perspective, because I mean, I have a perspective of being a developer as well as a user. Personally, I think managing an external entity table within the plant and app structure could potentially not only cause confusion, but a lot of headache, because you need to understand what's local, what's not local. Then you also have the added complexity of the fact that wherever the remote data is, number one, you have to have the permissions, or rather I should say plant and app would need the permissions to be able to make the modifications, which brings security into the whole mix, which it would be a nightmare because plant and app will not be able to control that security. You'd be responsible for that on the remote side. There just winds up being like a whole waterfall of different issues when you're talking about having plant and app manage an external table.
Among them,
That
synchronization could become a problem.
right, I mean, someone could still modify something externally directly on that remote system, and plant and app is not going to be aware of it. So that all being said, my personal opinion, I think the somewhat dynamic way, and maybe the more, in my view, not saying that this is 100% accurate, I'm just saying this is my personal view, the more accurate and correct way of doing something like that when you're talking about having external data is create an entity within plant and app that holds a connection string and the definition of the file, the field structure of a table. So the table's name and all the fields that are within it. Create one entity that holds that information. So one record per table, whatever, and it, you know, builds it all out. Then you can have, for example, a workflow that you feed it the table name. Let's say it's a workflow for reading data. So similar to how when you create an entity, you get that action to read, you'd have a workflow that you can execute, give it the table name, and you know, whatever additional pieces you want to put into that workflow that is generic enough that it'll work for any table that you define in there. And then it would spit back all that data. It would go out, run the SQL statement using that connection string, building the SQL statement dynamically based off of the definition of the fields that you've put into that local table. It'll execute that dynamic SQL, return the data, and then push back that data in whatever format you want. Typically, you know, you would probably do something like JSON. And then once you receive that data from the workflow, parse the JSON to a token, and then you have basically all of your data available to you. And then similar idea with regards to writing the data back. You know, you would execute a workflow, you would pass it all the relevant pieces that, you know, you want or whatever, and have the workflow build that SQL statement dynamically, execute it with the connection string that is stored in the table. And then at that point, now you basically have, for example, 3 items locally, one being the table with the definitions, one being a workflow for reading, one being a workflow for writing. And that's it. And all your data will actually still be housed remotely. You just basically kind of have an interface on the local plant and app side that will help you manage that data. But to ask plant and app to fully manage the table, I think when you're talking about something that could potentially be modified externally, I think is more dangerous than anything else.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you that having plant and app manage the table would not, you know, on that other database, because it goes both ways. That table's out there from another system, so that, you know, the coordinating and stuff. But I like your idea of bringing that schema in, and I don't know what the client saw that they liked was the idea of actions. You know, read external table A, and being able to pull that into things. And I don't know, I haven't explored plant and app internally. I know you can create actions. Is that like a configuration file that is built, or is that a piece of code that's generated when you have a new action, or is it a combination of both? So,
Yeah, so new actions, custom actions are both. It's the configuration file that it points to code that's linked in dynamically.
So
But-
in theory, using Ben's concept, your generic workflow, you could build a common, for lack of a better term, DLL that you'll implement, and then let PlantApp or let Ben's concept maybe create the configuration file that gets you names and the pretty stuff on the screen, and let it link through to get an action that's created for an external table.
Yep. Of course, the execute workflow, I mean, when you create a workflow, that creates an action for you that's
Right.
execute.
It's yeah. Okay.
Yep, doing it as a workflow has been kind of worked through the steps. I agree. It had if you have a many record structure and it's JSON and you're passing JSON around, versus if you did it as a custom action, you could have it return a list that could be worked with the execute items for each list action kind of thing. So there's pluses and minuses to go in both ways.
Yeah, but even if, I mean, on a side, unless I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, if your workflow is returning JSON, if you have it set to return JSON, I should say, or you could even have it set, I guess, to return different formats and use the one that you want, you can parse your JSON to a list and then, you know,
Yep.
basically process it that way. So no matter which way you slice it, you're going to get your data in some sort of a format that if it's multiple rows, you can still work your way through it.
Oh, absolutely. I wasn't saying that. I mean, I think it's possible. The question then becomes, you know, if there's a lot of data and there's performance kind of issues, right? You're taking it, converting it to JSON, and then converting it out to back out to a list so you can process it. Versus if you're staying in code, you could just return a list. Yeah. Interesting.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Ben.
Good one. So since we've
Anytime.
had an hour, I'm going to advance to our happy little coding screen. We will adjourn in a moment to our Afterglow segment, our July 4th special Afterglow segment. But we're glad that you joined us and hope that you'll join us again for another exciting episode of Low Code Campfire next week. Thanks, guys.